So we know now that sunspots show up on the surface of the sun where we have stronger magnetic fields. The Zeeman effect shows us that. It's a way of using spectroscopy to figure out where there's a strong magnetic field. Let's look at this diagram, which is showing us magnetic fields mapped out on the surface of the sun and where we see stronger magnetic fields. In this diagram, which is called a magnetogram, yellow is a north magnetic pole, something that's bright yellowish white like this or like this, and then the dark blue is a south magnetic pole. So you have to have north and south magnetic poles together. This is figured out again by spectroscopy, and we are able to map out where we see stronger magnetic fields on the surface of the sun by going over the entire surface and measuring out those stronger or weaker magnetic fields, and then getting this diagram called a magnetogram, which you must agree does not look like the regular photosphere of the sun. But if we were to suddenly pull away this diagram and underneath it have a photograph of the surface of the sun, which was taken at the same time as the magnetogram, you would see sunspots in every one of these locations where you see the north and south magnetic poles paired up. So, once again, the magnetogram is showing the same thing that the Zeeman effect was showing for the single sunspots in the previous lecture. That's talking about where sunspots are being formed in pairs now, because they're in north and south pairs according to the north and south poles that they have for their magnetic fields. So, in the sunspot pairs, one spot is always a north magnetic pole, and the other spot goes with a south magnetic pole. This was predictable when we were looking at this theory in the first place with this diagram that showed that when a magnetic field comes out of the surface of the sun, it also has to go looping back into the surface of the sun, and that would make sunspots have to show up in pairs. So that theory would have made a prediction that we would see exactly what we're seeing right here. Sunspots on the sun tend to show up in pairs. Now there's something else to try and notice from this diagram that's a little bit more subtle. Up here on the north, here's a north magnetic pole. Behind it is a south magnetic pole, and the sun is rotating in this direction. So the yellow magnetic pole is going first, and the south magnetic pole is following it. Up here, yellow magnetic north pole is first, and south is following it. Yellow is first, south is following. Yellow is first, and south is following. But look down here in the other hemisphere, the southern hemisphere of the sun. Down here, the dark blue is leading. So down in the southern hemisphere, the south magnetic pole is in front as it rotates around, and then the north magnetic pole is behind. It seems to be that this pattern is reversed when you compare the north hemisphere of the sun to the south hemisphere of the sun. That's something important to the cycle of the sun, which is what we talk about next.